Every man has experienced this, yet almost no man understands it. The moment you stop giving a woman attention, something dramatic shifts inside her. Not in her behavior first, but in her psychology. You think she doesn't notice, you think she doesn't care, you think your silence means nothing, but that quiet moment you pull your energy back. That is the moment her internal world flips from certainty to curiosity, from comfort to confusion, from control to emotional exposure. Because attention is not just attention to a woman, it is emotional oxygen. When you feed her your time, your words, your presence, your effort, she builds a quiet expectation he will be there. She relaxes into your predictability. She becomes confident in her position. She starts taking your consistency for granted. She stops feeling the need to invest, not out of disrespect, but out of human psychology. People value what feels limited and they become numb to what feels guaranteed. But the moment you go silent, everything changes. Your silence creates the one thing she cannot control: uncertainty. Not anger, not punishment, not manipulation, uncertainty. And uncertainty is the emotional environment where female attraction becomes raw, activated, and unpredictable. Suddenly, she becomes hyper aware of your absence. Her mind begins analyzing details she ignored before. She rereads old messages. She wonders why you pulled away. She notices the void your presence used to fill. Her imagination replaces your silence with questions, questions that sting her ego, challenge her pride, and awaken an emotional tension she hasn't felt in a long time. Because here's the truth: a woman is never more aware of her feelings than when she loses access to your attention. She doesn't lose control because you disappeared. She loses control because your absence forces her to confront one terrifying possibility. Maybe he doesn't need me. Maybe he's moving on. Maybe he stopped caring. When a man goes silent, truly silent, from a place of strength, not insecurity, it shakes the emotional foundation she stood on so confidently. It forces her to reevaluate not you, but herself, her behavior, her effort, her value in your world, the story she told herself about your connection. Suddenly, the power dynamic flips without you doing anything except reclaiming your presence. Your silence becomes a mirror. It shows her whether she truly values you. It shows her whether she took you for granted. It shows her whether she feels something deeper than she admitted. And that's the moment she loses emotional control. Not in chaos, but in awareness. The awareness that you are not chasing, the awareness that you are not available on command, the awareness that your life moves whether she participates or not. And in that awareness, her mind begins chasing what her ego once dismissed. Today, we are going to break down exactly what happens inside her emotional system the moment you stop giving her attention, and why silence, when used correctly, becomes the most powerful masculine presence she has ever felt. Before we start, a quick reminder: the real transformation doesn't happen on YouTube, it happens inside the community. If these videos have opened your eyes, what's inside will rebuild your mindset completely. It's not just a course, it's a brotherhood. A private space where men master attraction, emotional control, and the psychology of power. You don't join for a month, you join for life. Every future course, book, and lesson is yours forever. No subscriptions, no limits, just one decision that changes your direction. If you're serious about growth, discipline, and purpose, click the link below. Join the community, enroll once, grow forever. Let's dive in. Section 1: why your silence triggers her instincts more than your words ever could. A woman reacts to silence in a way most men will never fully understand. To you, silence might feel like distance, rest, discipline, or simply the decision to stop giving energy to someone who isn't valuing it. But to a woman, silence is not neutral. It is emotional disruption. And this disruption awakens deep psychological mechanisms that attention cannot reach. Women navigate the world through emotional signals. They read tone, energy, patterns, consistency, and rhythm. They feel connection before they think about connection. And when your attention is present every day, she adapts to that emotional rhythm. Even if she doesn't reciprocate the same level of effort, she feels your presence as a constant, a baseline, something she can rely on whether she realizes it or not. But when you suddenly withdraw your attention, when your tone disappears, when your presence fades, when your emotional rhythm breaks, her instincts activate instantly. Her brain goes into evaluation mode because something in her, something in environment has changed, not externally, internally. Your silence becomes a psychological alarm. Her mind begins asking questions she didn't ask when you were available. Why did he stop talking? Did I do something wrong? Is he losing interest? Is he talking to someone else? Why isn't he reacting the way men normally do? These questions are not about you. They are about her relationship to your presence. Your silence forces her to realize something she didn't expect. She was more emotionally attached to your attention than she admitted, even to herself. And here's the twist men don't see. A woman feels your absence more intensely if she assumed your attention was guaranteed. When you were consistent, she didn't question your interest. She didn't feel urgency. She didn't feel fear. She didn't feel the possibility of loss. But silence introduces the one thing her ego cannot tolerate: uncertainty. Uncertainty is the birthplace of emotional investment. Her instincts read your silence as a shift in power. She senses you are no longer orbiting around her. She feels your energy returning to yourself. She feels the gap that your attention used to fill. And whether she wants to or not, she starts gravitating toward the man who is no longer chasing, because women do not chase attention. They chase the loss of attention. Your silence tells her you are not dependent on her validation. You are not emotionally reactive. You are not afraid of losing her. You are not controlled by her behavior. You are not waiting for her approval. This emotional neutrality is what disrupts her sense of control. And that disruption is what triggers deeper attraction. Silence creates contrast, and contrast awakens desire. The truth is simple. She notices your silence much more than she ever noticed your presence. Section 2, in the psychological discomfort your silence creates inside her mind. When you stop giving a woman attention, the first shift isn't emotional, it's psychological. Her mind begins organizing information differently because silence disrupts her sense of control in a way she cannot easily ignore. Women rely on emotional patterns to understand where they stand with a man. These patterns make her feel secure, confident, and aware of the dynamic. Whether she admits it or not, she becomes accustomed to your presence, to the reliability of your messages, to the rhythm of your availability, and even to the subtle feeling that she can predict you. That predictability gives her a form of stability, but it also numbs her emotional sensitivity toward you. She doesn't feel urgency because she feels certainty. She doesn't feel curiosity because she feels predictability. She doesn't feel desire because she feels comfort. When a man is consistently present, women often drift into a sense of control, believing your attention belongs to them, not because you gave it freely, but because they assume it will always be there. Silence destroys that assumption instantly. The moment you pull back, her mind experiences a break in the pattern. It's not the silence itself that bothers her. It's the change. Women feel change before they understand it. They feel tension before they identify it. And they feel the loss of emotional influence before they admit it. This sudden shift creates discomfort because your silence forces her to evaluate a dynamic she took for granted. Even if she wasn't deeply invested, even if she wasn't thinking about commitment, even if she believed she held all the emotional power, the absence of your attention removes her sense of certainty. Certainty makes her relaxed. Uncertainty makes her reflective. Women do not fear silence. They fear the meaning behind silence, and their mind begins working overtime to decode it. This psychological discomfort grows because your silence confronts her with questions she never needed to ask before. She wonders if she misread your intentions. She wonders if she overestimated her importance in your life. She wonders if you became disappointed or disinterested or emotionally detached. She wonders if another woman took your attention. She wonders if she should have appreciated you more when you were present. None of this is said out loud. It happens beneath the surface where female intuition operates. And while she may act unbothered externally, internally, she is scanning every memory of your recent interactions, looking for clues to understand why the energy shifted. This is where the real power of silence lies. It forces her to see what your attention was worth. It exposes whether she valued you or simply enjoyed the comfort of being valued by you. It reveals whether she was genuinely interested or only responding to the emotional security your presence provided. Silence separates genuine connection from ego-driven comfort, and once her ego is disturbed, her emotions inevitably follow. She becomes more aware of how she feels about you simply because your absence forces her to confront those feelings without distraction. A woman does not lose control because you withdrew. She loses control because your silence reveals the truth she was avoiding about how much your attention actually meant. Section 3. How your silence forces her to confront the feelings she tried to ignore. When you were giving her attention, she never had to confront how she truly felt about you. Your presence made it easy for her to stay comfortable, to stay passive, to stay in control of the dynamic. She didn't have to analyze your value because you were always there. She didn't have to question her behavior because you always responded. She didn't have to consider losing you because she subconsciously sensed that you wouldn't leave. Your availability allowed her to float in emotional neutrality, a space where she could enjoy your presence without feeling pressure to reciprocate. But the moment your attention disappears, reality shifts. Silence cuts through her comfort like a blade. Now she has nothing external to lean on, no message to predict, no reassurance to rely on, no interaction to feel above. She is left with only one thing, her real emotions, and that is exactly what she has been trying to avoid. Your silence forces her to evaluate the space you once filled, and that evaluation wakes up feelings she thought she never had. She begins remembering the way she felt when you spoke to her, the subtle warmth she didn't acknowledge, the comfort she pretended wasn't important. She begins replaying your compliments, your energy, your attention, and the way your presence made her feel seen. When you were available, she didn't notice these things. When you disappear, she notices everything. Women feel losses far more deeply than gains. A man's presence can be overlooked, but the absence of a man she was emotionally attached to, even slightly, hits her with a clarity she cannot escape. This clarity often appears as anxiety, confusion, or irritation, but beneath it is something softer and far more vulnerable. She starts wondering why your silence affects her so much. She questions why she feels uneasy, why she keeps checking her phone, why she suddenly cares about your opinion, why she feels a small sting in her chest when she imagines you giving another woman the attention she once received effortlessly. These emotions dismantle the story she told herself, the story that she was detached, unbothered, or in full control. The truth is that she cared far more than she allowed herself to believe. Your silence forces that truth to the front of her mind. What's important here is that silence doesn't create feelings, it reveals them. The feelings were already there, buried under her certainty, her ego, her comfort, or her pride. When you go silent, those layers fall away. She is now exposed to her own emotional reality. She realizes she relied on your presence more than she admitted. She realizes she took your consistency for granted. She realizes she didn't appreciate what she had when she had it. And for the first time, she begins to understand your value, not through your actions, but through the emptiness left by your absence. Your silence makes her feel the truth she ignored. And once she feels it, she can't unfill it. That is why your silence is powerful. It forces her deeper into the emotional connection than attention ever could. Section 4, the loss of emotional power, why your silence shifts the entire dynamic. When you stop giving her attention, the biggest change isn't what she feels about you, it's what she feels about herself in relation to you. Attention creates a very quiet form of emotional power for a woman. She feels desired, she feels chosen, she feels certain, and she feels subtly in control. She doesn't need to express much because Your consistent presence expresses everything for her. She doesn't need to give effort because your effort fills the space before she has the chance. She doesn't need to question anything because your messages, your availability, and your engagement do the reassuring for her. But the moment that source of validation disappears, she loses something she didn't realize she was holding so tightly. The psychological advantage created by your predictability, your silence strips away her emotional power, it interrupts her sense of certainty. She can no longer assume your attention belongs to her. She can no longer count on your energy being directed toward her. She can no longer depend on the emotional comfort you provided, and in that moment, the dynamic shifts from her having control to her losing her grip entirely. Women are incredibly intuitive when it comes to changes in male energy, and they feel loss of control, not immediately through sadness, but through tension. Her mind becomes restless because her ego loses balance. She is no longer in the position of being pursued. She is now in the position of being uncertain, and uncertainty is the emotional terrain where women either grow deeper feelings or finally understand how much they were pretending not to care. This shift is uncomfortable for her because it confronts the part of her that enjoyed your attention without giving much in return. She begins to realize the emotional power she held wasn't based on genuine connection, but on your willingness to constantly initiate, reassure, and maintain the dynamic. When that energy is gone, she doesn't just feel your absence, she feels the collapse of the comfort she built around your availability. That collapse creates a vacuum inside her, and the human heart hates a vacuum. Something must fill it. And what fills it first is awareness. Awareness of how much you meant, awareness of how much she relied on your attention, awareness of how deeply your presence affected her, awareness that she never had as much control as she believed. And this is where a psychological phenomenon occurs. The moment you remove your energy, she begins projecting more meaning onto it. Your attention becomes more valuable when it no longer flows toward her automatically. Your silence becomes louder than your words ever were. Your absence becomes the most intense message you've ever sent. And that message is simple. You are not tied to her emotionally, and she no longer has the silent power she held when you were consistently available. Paradoxically, this loss of emotional power becomes the doorway to emotional interest. When you stop giving her attention, you don't just shift the dynamic, you force her into a position where she must start investing if she wants to restore what she lost. And that switch from passive to active is exactly what ignites deeper feelings. Section 5. Why your silence makes her start chasing the connection. She once controlled. When a woman feels the emotional shift created by your silence, something subtle but profound begins to occur inside her. She starts chasing the connection she once took for granted, not with desperation, not always with open words, often quietly, indirectly, cautiously. But the internal momentum has changed. The moment your attention becomes scarce, her emotional system switches from comfort to pursuit. This isn't manipulation, it's human psychology. People pursue what they fear they might lose, and they drift from what they believe they will always keep. Your silence exposes that reality. And instantly, when you were giving her attention consistently, she never had to question where she stood with you. She never had to initiate because you always did. She never had to think about losing you because your energy kept reassuring her. You made the investment, so she didn't feel the need to. But now that your attention is gone, she begins to realize that if she wants the connection to continue, the effort must come from her side. This is often the first time she feels the pressure to act, not because you demanded it, but because your silence created emotional space where her own desire must finally reveal itself. She starts wondering how to get your attention back without lowering her pride. She begins posting more online, hoping you'll notice. She replies to old messages or interacts with something you shared. She finds excuses to reach out, or she waits for you to view her story and spirals when you don't. These behaviors might seem small, but psychologically, they are massive shifts. They signal that she is now stepping into the role you once held, the role of the emotionally invested party. Your silence forces her to ask, "What if he doesn't come back?" That question awakens emotions she didn't expect to feel. Interest becomes curiosity. Curiosity becomes concern. Concern becomes desire. Desire becomes longing. Longing becomes fear. And fear becomes action. Women rarely chase openly, but internally, they are now moving toward you far more intensely than you ever moved toward them. This is where the man gains the advantage without playing games. When you stop giving attention, you aren't punishing her. You are simply reclaiming your energy and directing it toward yourself. This act alone communicates a level of emotional independence she didn't expect. Women are deeply attracted to men who do not orbit around their approval. When you remove your attention, you demonstrate that your world is not built around her. And the moment she realizes she is no longer at the center of your focus, she feels the need to re enter your world. Not because she wants to win, but because she now feels the emotional gap created by your absence. Silence creates a vacuum in the dynamic, and her instincts push her to fill it. Effort replaces entitlement, curiosity replaces complacency, vulnerability replaces control, and the more she invests emotionally to reestablish the connection, the more her feelings deepen. Women bond through effort, not through receiving attention, but through giving it. She didn't lose control because you disappeared. She lost control because your silence activated her desire to get you back. Section 6, how silence forces her to see your value without you proving anything. One of the most misunderstood truths in male-female dynamics is this: a woman rarely sees a man's true value when he is constantly available. She only realizes it when his presence is no longer guaranteed. When you were giving her attention consistently, she didn't have to measure what you meant to her. She lived in a comfortable emotional illusion where your presence was stable, predictable, and easily accessible. Human nature becomes blind to what is abundant and hyper aware of what becomes scarce. Your silence corrects that imbalance instantly. When your energy was available, she never needed to evaluate it. She assumed it would always be there, so she allowed herself to drift in and out without much thought. But once that energy is removed, she is confronted with the question she never asked herself before: what if he actually had more value than I realized? This is the beginning of emotional clarity. Silence removes the noise of your effort and forces her to see the truth. Not because you are proving anything, but because she finally has to evaluate the emotional weight of who you were to her. In your absence, she replays conversations that once felt ordinary. She remembers compliments she shrugged off too quickly. She thinks about the support you offered without expecting anything in return. She recalls the way you listened, the way you made her feel, the steadiness you carried, the warmth you gave. All these details rise to the surface because there is no new input from you to distract her. Your silence makes the past feel louder. Your absence makes your previous presence feel more meaningful. And her emotional system begins realizing something uncomfortable. She had a good man and she didn't appreciate him properly. But this recognition does not come with calm acceptance. It comes with emotional friction. She wants to deny the truth because it threatens her ego. She wants to blame you for pulling away to avoid admitting she played a role in the shift. She wants to convince herself she doesn't care, even as she checks her phone, hoping your name appears. This internal battle is what reveals your value, not to the world, but to her. She begins to see you not through the lens of abundance, but through the lens of loss. Your silence quietly displays qualities she never saw clearly before. Your discipline, your self-respect, your emotional independence, your ability to walk away without drama, your refusal to chase or beg. These qualities hit her deeply because they contrast sharply with the behavior of most men she has encountered. Silence is not weakness. It is a demonstration of control, and control in masculine psychology is one of the strongest signals of value a woman can perceive. She realizes you are not desperate. She realizes you are not emotionally reactive. She realizes you are not dependent on her attention. She realizes you are not trying to convince her of your worth. And this forces her into a place where she must reassess everything. Not because you demanded it, but because your silence made the truth impossible for her to ignore. In the end, the reason she loses control when you stop giving her attention has nothing to do with games, manipulation, or punishment. It has everything to do with psychology, emotional rhythm, and the sudden disappearance of something she relied on without realizing it. Your presence was a quiet stabilizer in her world, a predictable source of validation, curiosity, and emotional comfort. Even if she never admitted it, even if she acted indifferent, even if she pretended she didn't care, she built emotional expectations around your consistency. And the moment that consistency disappears, her nervous system is forced into a state it cannot ignore. Your silence removes certainty, and certainty is the foundation of emotional control. When you were attentive, she always knew where she stood. She felt secure enough to stay passive. She felt confident enough to be slow. She felt powerful enough to contribute little. But your silence removes her map, her script, her emotional safety net. Suddenly, she is no longer sure of your feelings, your intentions, or your availability. And in that vacuum of uncertainty, her mind becomes louder than her pride. She begins thinking about you more than she intended. She starts missing what she once took for granted. She becomes uncomfortable with her own lack of influence. This shift exposes a deeper truth. Attention is not neutral. When it disappears, it reveals the emotional value she secretly assigned to you. If she didn't care, your silence would nothing. But she does care more than she allowed herself to believe. That's why your silence affects her. Not because she wants to regain control over you, but because she must regain control over her own internal imbalance. You disrupted a pattern she was comfortable with, and now her emotions must reorganize themselves around the absence you created. Your silence doesn't push her away, it forces her to see you clearly, without your effort clouding her judgment. She sees your self respect, your discipline, your boundaries, and your emotional independence. She sees that you are not desperate, not reactive, not fragile, and not dependent on her for validation. She sees that you can walk away from what doesn't serve you. And and that realization triggers the deepest emotional reaction a woman can experience, admiration mixed with fear of loss. This is why silence is powerful. It is not aggression, it is not withdrawal, it is not coldness, it is clarity. A woman cannot appreciate what she never has the chance to lose, and your silence gives her that chance. The chance to feel your value through the emptiness you leave behind. It makes her see the difference between the men who overwhelm her with need and the man who overwhelms her with discipline. It shows her that your loyalty is a choice, not a dependency.